Welcome to the Case Interview Podcast. And in this episode, we're going to talk about 6 beginner mistakes that will wreck your case preparation. Right, Julio?
Yeah.
So when I was first applying, and it's a short story, but it's cool. When I was first applying, I had about 3 months to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the time I got multiple rejections, so it clearly didn't work out.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that I basically wasted 2 out of those 3 months doing things that I now see, and even in my second time preparing, I saw that was basically useless. And I don't know if 3 months would have been enough to get offers in my first attempt, but certainly 1 month that what was left wasn't. So I don't know. I hope we can help candidates avoid doing this in their preparation.
Yeah. I think that most candidates under beginners, beginners always make a ton of mistakes and end up wasting a lot of time. And luckily for them, we've been coaches and we've been on the space for long enough to see the patterns. So hopefully these 6 mistakes will cover the mistakes that everyone who's watching are doing, and they can, instead of having 1 month to prepare, have actually 3 months to prepare.
Yeah, so they can use their time better. And usually most time is wasted in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because you could avoid that. And I'd like to make the distinction of making mistakes in your cases, in your performance, which is normal.
Yeah.
I mean, you're starting out, you're a beginner, you're trying to learn this, so it's normal to make these mistakes, and it's not a waste of time or anything. And the types of mistakes that we'll talk today in this episode, which are preparation mistakes. So
yeah, right.
Mistakes in your approach to prepare. So it's kind of like if you're trying to, lose weight or something, you can waste a lot of time by doing things that are not effective at all. And I think we've all been through that in the weight loss scenario. And this is the type of mistakes that that we'll share today, which are the mistakes that will wreck your case interview preparation, right? They will wreck your approach for getting better.
Yeah.
Right?
And
so, yeah.
basically, Bruno and I brought 3 mistakes that we think are the top 3 each, and we're going to share them with you.
Yeah, and there might be some overlap, but
yeah,
I don't think much. So why don't you go ahead and start with the first mistake?
All right. I'm starting with my first mistake, and I think that this is the greatest mistake I see out there. Almost every candidate does this, and you watching this are probably making this right now, or you've made this in the past. And that is taking forever to do your first case. This is something that most candidates do, really. And because of that, it's also a great way of standing out, because it's so easy to do your first case right away, but no one's doing it.
Yeah.
So basically, I think that the reason people do this is...
Before that,
right.
Why is it a mistake?
Okay, good point. Well, here's the thing. Let me share a story with you for this example. When I was learning scuba diving for the first time, I remember I had a 4-hour-long lesson on everything that you need to do once you're inside the water.
Right.
And then the next day, I got a scuba diving gear from the instructor, and I got inside a pool.
Yeah.
And then I immediately forgot everything. Everything went wrong.
Yeah.
And then I had to get out of the pool, and the instructor explained everything all over again.
Yeah.
And then I got into the pool again, and I could do everything.
Yeah.
So I think the point is, you don't learn any skill without actually touching it.
Right.
That first lesson, almost all of it went to waste, because once I got into the pool, everything was forgotten. And I think the reason for that is, once you've done something and you've failed at something, you've got emotional ties to your experience.
Right.
And those emotional ties are where you plug the information into in your mind. So when the instructor was explaining to me, what you should do, for example, when your head starts hurting when you're under the water because of the pressure. I didn't have that experience, so I didn't have anywhere to put it, so I basically forget it like everything else. But once I was in the water and I could feel the pain and I could feel the desperation of not having anywhere to go, not being able to go up so quickly, and not being able to release my pain, then when the instruction explained to me, do this and this and this with your nose and with the air, I had somewhere emotional to put that information into. And when I was in the water and that happened, I could easily recall that.
Right. You see why that specific advice for that specific problem is relevant.
Exactly.
Versus like another thing that they're saying. And I guess it makes sense for scuba diving that they give you a 4-hour lecture before, because there's safety and risks involved, and there's also legal liabilities from their side, right? So if they didn't do that, then it's dangerous in a physical way. But for cases, as for example, riding a bicycle, right? You don't watch 4 hours of YouTube videos before you try your first time riding a bicycle, even though you might get your knees scraped or something. You're not going to die, right? And for cases, it's even less physical risk. I mean, there's no physical risk. Yet there is some psychological risk, which I see a lot of people avoid doing their first case early because they will feel dumb.
Yeah.
And they know they will feel dumb because they know they probably won't perform very well. And most people who do these interviews, they don't like to feel dumb, right?
Yeah.
So it's there's a bit of tension there.
Yeah, there's kind of a catch, because everyone who's trying for consulting, in some sense, they're a high achiever. They're an achiever. They're a high performer.
Yeah.
And they don't like to fail. They don't like to be seen as someone who failed. So they try to be perfect in case interviews before they do their first case. But the catch is, you can't be perfect. You can barely learn anything before you fail. So the point is actually failing. Yeah. And they don't want to fail, so they take forever to do the first case. And there's a second problem, and that one's more practical. Like I'll give them the benefit in this one. And that's a catch-22 where, like, if you're a beginner and you want to do a mock interview, you need a partner. But you're a beginner, so you can't get a really good partner because you don't have that much to offer.
Right.
So they're in sort of a catch-22 because they can't get a good partner because they're not good, but they can't get good if they don't get a good partner.
Right.
Right. So
because no one who's done 30 cases and done a few first rounds will want to do a case with you, unless they're your friend or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 I think the way out of this mindset that will get you stuck, because you need to start somewhere, is to realize that the role of the first case is not for you to have a great practice session. It is for you to get that feeling, that embodiment of what the process feels like.
Yeah.
And so when you go and study the books, our courses, and our free course, for example, or watch YouTube videos, as you said, you actually have some emotional ties with certain situations, so you can sort through what is important advice versus what is less important advice, or more trivial stuff that's being said for the sake of being said. And that's basically the role of the first case, right?
Yeah.
And even of the first few cases is for you to get a sense, very emotional and dynamic sense, like your body feels, your mind understands at a deeper level than the cognitive level.
Yeah.
What's gonna happen?
Yeah, I would say in simple terms that the goal of the first case is to fail.
Yeah,
and you need to fail right away.
It's to do it quickly. Yeah. So let's think, like, when you say taking forever to do your first case, what is the usual time people take to do their first case? So people can see themselves if they're in this situation. And also, what would be your recommended time frame? Like, I started my preparation today. Today I decided that I want to prepare for consulting. When should I do my first case? Is it like 2 hours from now, 3 days from now, 2 weeks from now?
Great point. So I've seen most people that take time, will take 2 weeks to do their first case. But I've seen people take a month, 2 months, maybe more.
And what are they doing in those 2 weeks to a month?
They're reading all of the books. They're watching all of the videos. They're watching McKinsey partner videos and reading economic magazines and reading industry reports.
Opening 50 tabs in their Chrome browser.
Yes, exactly. And my recommendation would actually be, so if you would do a case right now, you can't exactly do a case right now because you need a partner and they're not in front of you.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be go get a partner and schedule a case with them right now.
Yeah.
And then until the moment that you schedule, which can be in 2 hours or in 24 hours maybe, watch 1 or 2 case interview videos. Not more than that. You don't need to do anything more than that.
Yeah, I'd say a fair timeline is first couple days, if you have plenty of time, right?
Yeah.
First couple days, you don't need to do the case. Like you can watch a couple 101 videos, like case interview basics, watch a couple case interview example videos, watch a few videos of our course, but then try to schedule a case as soon as possible. And I'd say either an estimation case, which is really simple.
Yeah.
Especially if you've gone through, for example, our first module in the free course, it teaches estimations. You'll be fully prepared to do that. Or a profitability case. Watch a couple profitability cases on YouTube so you know what you're supposed to do. And it's a fairly simple type of case. And you can just do it and you won't do very well, but you'll be done with it. And then you do a couple more and then everything starts making sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, people are going to be afraid of failing, and we need to respect that. And so starting with an estimation or profitability case will help that a lot because they're simpler cases. What you need to do is more straightforward. I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay, so let me do mistake number 2, which is reading all the books. You kind of mentioned that in passing.
Yes.
And it's a way people procrastinate a lot.
It's productive procrastination.
It's
seemingly productive.
Exactly. So what a lot of candidates do is they start their case interview preparation. They tell themselves, oh, I want to go into consulting, so I'll do this case thing. And next thing they do is they buy a book. And not everyone does that, but a lot of people like books. And they buy a book. Maybe it's Case in Point. Maybe it's Victor Cheng's Case Interview Secrets or some other book they find on Amazon. There's Crack the Case as well. And I have nothing against books. Books are wonderful. Even case interview books can be fine. Although most are not very good.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can swear on YouTube, but
I don't know as well.
Yeah, most are worse than useless. Let's call it that way. But for example, Victor Cheng's book is fine. I think it helps. Now there's 2 problems with books. The first is you will read one book and you will feel unsatisfied.
Yeah.
And that's natural because these case interview books are focused towards beginners who have no idea what is a case interview, what is consulting, what am I going to have for breakfast this morning? Like, I don't know anything. And also it's a book. It's not doing a case. So you will feel unsatisfied as you would feel if you were to learn scuba diving from a textbook. Like you'll never feel...
You never feel safe to go underwater.
Exactly. And the other problem with books... Oh, and so the first problem, back to the first problem, sorry. So you read one book, you feel unsatisfied.
Yeah.
And what do a lot of people do? They read another book.
Yeah.
And they read another book. And you keep feeling unsatisfied because the problem is not with the first book that you've read, especially if it's a good book like Victor Cheng's is fine. The problem is with the medium.
Yeah.
And the way these books are written and the audiences these books are written for. And the second problem with books is that it takes a lot of time to go through a book. So if you watch, for example, a Case Interview Basics or Case Interview 101 video on YouTube, you spend like 20 minutes in that video.
Yeah.
And then you might watch 2 or 3 more, and you've spent an hour. No big deal, right? Now, if you read a book, it takes like 4 or 5 hours that you'll probably split across a few days at least, maybe a week. And so if you read all the books, like a lot of people do, and you move from book to book, and you do nothing else until you feel satisfied with the books, well, you won't feel satisfied because it's not the right medium for learning this.
Yeah.
And also, you have wasted 3 weeks, 4 weeks reading books. And especially if you haven't done a few cases like you've mentioned before, you have nothing to connect that information emotionally. So
I think that as you said, most books aren't bad per se, except for Case in Point. Case in Point is bad and misleading. We've talked about that in other podcast episodes. But the biggest problem with the books is that they allow you to delay your first case for a long time, feeling productive, not feeling like you're doing anything wrong, but you're delaying the first thing that you need to do, or one of the first things, which is a mock interview. And if you've done like 5 or 10 cases, then you're going to learn from those books. If you haven't, you're really going to learn nothing.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think a lot of people like the books because they give some structure, even like a mental structure of how to think about this. And it's a place they can reference, and that is somewhat complete. So I won't say don't read any books. I don't think you need to. I think videos on YouTube plus our free course do just fine. But if you want to read a book, what I'd say is do it in parallel with some practice-based prep.
Right.
Because the problem with books is not that they exist or that, that you're reading them. Like, they're fine, as I said. But if you use them as a substitute or a way to procrastinate practice-based prep, you're not dipping your toes into the water. The information in the book won't be useful. You also fail to see the shortcomings of the book because books say a lot of things that sound nice in theory. But when you're doing the practice, which is what I call practice-based prep, then you see a lot of nuances that you go back to the book and you say, hey, this is very incomplete. So
I love this mistake that you brought. It really makes me wonder how many football books you need to read so you'll play like Messi or Ronaldo.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe even 20.
Or even with your friends. You don't need to go at that level. Like even with your friends, like you can read as much as you want, watch videos about football, and we're talking about European football, so soccer here. You won't know how to handle the ball, like how to shoot it or pass it or even make it stop when someone passes it to you, right? You need some practice. So what I'd say is if you want to read a book, do it one book only because it's very redundant to use others, and use it as a way to learn about things that you could learn in blogs on the web or something, but you can use a book and do some practice-based prep. And I'd say 2 things. If you have people to do mock interviews with, mock interviews are good. Or if you don't, try to find someone to do at least 1 or 2, like you said in the first mistake. It's very useful. But you can also do practice-based prep with practice drills through our free course, which you can find in the description of the video. You do drills on the types of questions that are asked within the case, and that's good practice-based prep as well. It doesn't have the other person doing follow-up questions and so on, but we try to emulate that with follow-up questions in video format, right? So that's way better than just reading books in sequence, wasting a whole month, and it's a better approach.
I think that my practical advice for this would be don't count your reading time as preparation time. So if you finish your day and you want to think through yourself, how much time have I prepared today, or have I prepared today or not? you cannot count books in that.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say only practice-based prep should be counted.
Yeah.
If you want to count it.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to do mistake number 3 as well, because it's kind of the opposite of reading too many books and so on.
Oh, yeah?
Kind of. It's never learning about the skills being tested.
What do you mean?
So a lot of people, either book readers or not, they do mock interview after mock interview after mock interview. I've seen in some circles, in some online forums, people saying, oh, the only thing that you should do is mock interview with other candidates. And I think that's shitty advice, man. I'll do swear words now.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's shitty advice, because I've seen people who have done like 50, 60 cases that were completely off in their performance.
Yeah.
It's not even that they were bad, it's that they've walked very long in a wrong direction. And the other thing that I see in these people is that they have huge gaps that any beginner interviewer, people who've interviewed like 10 people in a consulting firm, they can catch in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
For example, they don't structure brainstorming questions. They don't give so what's to analysis when they finish them. And maybe they know they should do it, but they don't do it. And a lot of people even don't know they should do it. And these are glaring gaps that basically get you rejected, because it shows immediately that you have no idea how consulting works and why you're being asked those questions and what are the interviews testing, which is related to what you do in your job.
Yeah.
And there's a certain way to do this job because it involves clients, it involves rigorous problem solving, it involves all these kinds of things. So it's kind of the opposite mistake, is like just doing practice-based prep, but even more, it's just doing unstructured practice-based prep. So instead of following a system that shows you in steps what you should be doing and why, you're just practicing with other candidates. And obviously the problem with other candidates is that they haven't gotten offers yet. It's kind of the blind leading the blind, right?
Yeah.
And even if they have gotten an offer, maybe they haven't spent, like, let's say you have a friend who just got offers at McKinsey, Bain, BCG, and several other firms. They clearly can solve the case, but do they understand exactly why they're so good, and also how to teach this in a structured way, right? So that's the mistake, never learning about these skills, so that you have huge gaps in your preparation.
Yeah, I think that this, we're outlining here a deeper understanding of case interviews, and that is, it's a skill. It's not something that you memorize of sorts. So like I said before, you should start practicing at some point. Like you should start practicing for real as soon as possible. You said, don't only read books. You're not going to memorize this. And I think that this point brings in the right way to practice, and that's bringing it back to the scuba diving example, because I think this is going to make this more clear. Imagine if you were to learn scuba diving by just going underwater more and more and more.
Right.
You're not going to come up with the right techniques.
You don't do safety drills for when, I don't know, your oxygen tank leaks or whatever. You don't do anything. Yeah.
You don't know the right way to call someone else, And so what happens is you're going to have to figure out this stuff when a problem comes up. And you really don't want to do that underwater. And you also really don't want to do that in front of your McKinsey interviewer. Yeah,
exactly. And what I think a lot of beginners don't understand is that they're testing very specific skills. Some of them consciously, like they actually have in their grading sheet, like, did the candidate do this? And a lot of them unconsciously, which is like, oh, if I give a chart to a candidate, how does How do they interpret it? And there's some conscious elements that they're testing, but there's also some unconscious elements. Like, are they reading this chart like my teammates do, like my analyst does, right?
Yeah.
And if it's way off, and it's okay to be different, but if it's way off in a way that they can tell that you would be ineffective in front of a client, for example, then you're like, they're gonna reject you, right? Because you're not showing the specific skills that they need on the job and that they're looking for, and that it's very natural for interviewers to look for. So if you're doing a mock interview after mock interview after mock interview, taking some time to understand exactly what skills are they looking for, which is what we teach in our free course. Yeah. And we teach everything in the free course in this sense, all the skills that they're looking for and why.
And how to do them.
And how to do them as well. If you stop and learn that, even after doing 30, 40 cases, you very quickly improve. Yeah. Because you'll be able to map out exactly where am I falling short in terms of performance, and how to tweak my performance so that it fulfills what the interviewer wants. Yeah. And it's very easy to do that when you understand why the interviewer wants it as well, which is, I think, is one thing that we bring in a unique way to the case prep market in general. Like, almost no one tells you why they're asking these things and why they want things in a certain way. And we always connect that to the real consulting job. So it's very easy for you to understand not only what skills are they testing for, but also why. Yeah. And what are the consequences of you doing it wrong.
Perfect. Can I go on to mistake number 4? I
Please
think
do.
that's my number 2, but number 4 for this whole episode.
Yeah, please do.
That is rote learning.
Okay.
Or memorization.
What do you mean by that?
I see a lot of candidates, especially beginners, trying to memorize all of the frameworks and do mental math until they are human calculators, because they think that that's what interviewers will look for.
Right, and they even memorize fractions, like what is 12 divided by 7, so they're a little bit faster.
Yeah, so they think that those fraction of seconds are going to help them in some way. And the truth is, I think that these people don't really understand what a case interview is. I think that maybe they've inherited from school a belief that memorization and getting to right answers and answering A in the right question where the answer is A or whatever will get them in. But the truth is, a case interview is very good at emulating the consulting job. And so interviewers are looking for the skills that will help you in the consulting job. And they're most definitely not memorization of frameworks or super quick mental math.
Right. It's all about how you think, right? Because if they had a problem that could be, if the clients had a problem that could be solved through memorization of frameworks, like your clients went to MBAs as well. Right?
Yeah, they would be able to memorize those frameworks. Yeah. And if they weren't, they would simply hire the consulting firm, and the consulting firm would hire someone much cheaper than the consultants that they're hiring. Exactly. So that they're just memorizers.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of these rote learning patterns, like especially with frameworks, like, oh, I need to learn a framework for market entry cases. Yeah. I think a lot of it happens in the beginning because you need some scaffolding to be able to do the case. Right? So I want to do some cases, but I don't know yet how to create my own frameworks, because this is a fairly advanced skill. Creating your own structures that are messy, that are insightful, that are effective. So they scaffold around this skill, kind of like riding a bike with side wheels. Yeah. So they do that so they can do the mock interview, and they can experience the mock interview. Yeah. And then they tell themselves that they will learn how to do this without memorization later. But the problem is then they hear these experts like, oh, you just need to memorize my 5 frameworks or whatever, and you'll be fine. And then it's too good to be true. But when you're stressed, short on time, sometimes you listen to these too good to be true types of advice.
Yeah. And you buy them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You believe them.
Yeah.
It feels comfortable.
It feels comfortable. Now, I think the thing to realize is everyone's using these materials. Interviewers do interviews hundreds of times per day, and they're looking for people who can think through new problems or through the nuances and specificities of problems that are fairly common. So when you use a memorized framework, for example, even if you adapt it a little bit, like 10, 20%, your interviewers seeing that specific framework dozens and dozens of times before, perhaps even with the last candidate that they've interviewed. And they're specifically avoiding people who do that because they want people who can think from first principles, right? So it's one of the reasons why McKinsey is using so much public sector cases in the past 5 or 10 years. They didn't used to do that. But they keep changing their cases so that the traditional frameworks don't work. Because they don't want people who just do this rote learning thing. And even interviewers at other firms, they also have their specific ways of twisting the case so that the normal framework won't work. So like I've seen cases at Bain, and BCG, where like on a superficial level, it's like, oh, it's just a regular market entry case. But when you dig into it, into the industry, into the specific constraints of the client, you see that the regular market entry frameworks that you see online, they don't work for that market entry case.
Yeah.
And they do that on purpose.
Yeah. I think that something that the candidates need to understand, they need to empathize with, is the role of the interviewer. You know, imagine that interviewer is not following checklists or whatever. They're sitting with you because they need someone who they can send to the client site, and that person will actually solve the client's problem. And if you solve a case perfectly, but with a clearly memorized framework, what the interviewer is going to think is not, great, they got the right question, they got the right answer. They're going to think, how do I know that this person is going to memorize the right framework to take to the client site and not screw up with my client who's, you know, giving me money, it's granting my job.
Yeah.
They're not going to risk their job because you might memorize the right framework. They want someone who will not need to memorize a framework, and that needs to be clear.
Yeah, and like even if you don't go to the client site when you first get in, most people don't alone. Like you usually go with the team. Like the interviewer, let's say the manager who's interviewing you, they don't want to put you in front of an impatient partner.
Yeah.
Who quickly see if you're actually thinking or if you're just bullshitting them.
Yeah.
And because it's a disaster, right?
Yeah.
It's a problem. So even within the team, there's high stakes as well.
Yeah.
And also, like, you get novel problems all the time because you're not going to be doing work on the should I enter this market level. This is what the team might work on, but you specifically as an associate, you're going to be working on a specific problem, like how does the regulatory environment will change the barriers to entry to this market in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And there's no framework for that. Like you need to create your own for that specific industry, for that specific time point you're on, because the answer, like the framework for this question changes if you're on the year 2000, 2010, 2020, or 2030, right?
Yeah. Now, this brings me to mistake number 5. So imagine that we're talking to a candidate who's doing everything before right. They're doing the right amount of learning the skills and actual practice-based learning, but there's still a mistake that hinders a lot of candidates. That is poor mock interview practice.
Okay.
They're doing mock interviews with bad case partners, or they're using poor cases, and they feel like they're being productive, but they know in deep down that they're not learning a lot in those mock interview sessions.
And we can extend that also to bad drills or bad case books.
Yes.
Right.
I guess that's where the bad cases come from.
Yeah.
So the problem here, like, it's obvious to anyone that if you're practicing wrongly or with bad tools, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
The problem for beginners is that they don't really know what a bad partner looks like. They'll have to do cases with that partner and maybe a few cases until they learn that that's a bad partner. They don't exactly know what a bad case looks like because they don't know what a good case looks like.
Right.
And so they can spend 2, maybe 4 weeks practicing with bad partners and getting bad cases again and again and again and not getting anywhere simply because they're beginners.
Yeah, and I think there's complications that come from the context. So when you're in your first 0 to 5 cases, a bad partner is not necessarily someone who's inexperienced, because you are too, and you're probably not gonna find any better without paying at least. So what is a bad partner in this context? It's someone who's not interested in together with you understanding how are you guys supposed to do that case, or someone who doesn't care about you, so they don't give any feedback. So it's different than when you're at case number 30 or 50, where you actually need someone who's good at cases, perhaps had some real interviewing experience to share feedback and has the right mindset. Because at this point, when you're at case 30 or 50, a lot of people have the bad mindset of, for example, rote learning or not understanding the skills being tested. So if you're at case number 30 and you have someone who maybe is good at cases, maybe they've gotten offers, but they have no idea why. And then they give you staple feedback, right? So, oh, you need to be more assertive in your communication. Okay, whatever the hell that means, right?
Yeah.
So what is a good partner depends on where you are in the journey.
Yeah.
Right? And also what do you need to improve on? And same for cases, right? So when you're starting out, a very good, very well made, but very complex case is not good for you.
True.
Right?
True.
And yeah, but there are some things that I'd say are common. So for cases or drills, very good answers that explain why is very good.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you are in the scale. What else would you say?
So I'd say the problem for beginners is when they get cases that are too simple, but don't tell you that they're too simple. Like maybe you want simple cases to begin with, estimations, profitability cases, but what you get instead are, very, very simple consumer goods, market entry cases. And you get the feeling that that's what you're going to get forever, that's what you're going to get in the interview. Another problem is that you see that a lot in case books. You have a case that, it's an okay case, but it doesn't give you the answer, or it doesn't give your mock interview partner a detailed explanation of the whys for that answer. So if you say something different than the regular answer, the answer from the case book, your mock partner is going to give you feedback and say, oh, you're wrong because you're saying this, not that.
I see this so many times, like almost every week we get a couple emails of people saying, oh, I did this case, and then the case is like this, and then I gave this answer, and I thought through in this way, but then my case partner said that it's wrong because the case book answers this other answer. So why is my answer wrong? And then their answer is better than the case book answer, or maybe not better, but perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But the other candidate couldn't assess that their answer was different yet good, or even better. And I think that like ideally, right? What I hear from you and adding to this thing, I think there's two things that you need for a good, like for quality practice, both with the other partner and the cases or drills. One is the answers context, right? So either different kinds of answers that would be valid and why, or a very good answer, but some notes about what could have been different and still okay. And very few resources have that. Actually, I think is there any other resource besides our own that has that?
No, I haven't seen it.
But I'm not saying this because, then you should use ours. It's just like we added this to our materials and it takes like 3 times the work because it's really important. Yeah. Right. And one way to see this is, of course, our free course, and the other is our casebook. Yeah. Which is a resource that not a lot of people know about, but you want to talk a little bit about it?
I do, because the thing with the casebook is it solves a really common catch-22 problem. That problem is, I've talked about it
and it's a free casebook, by the way.
Yeah.
It's like completely free.
I've talked about this problem before in this podcast, but it's a catch-22 where you're a beginner and you need someone that's slightly better than you to do the case with you because you know absolutely nothing. So ideally you want an experienced partner, but you can't be a good interviewer because you don't even know how to be interviewed, and being an interviewer is a little bit harder. So what we did in this casebook to solve this problem is give you good cases with follow-up questions that you can ask. So your partner is going to be getting a good case, and we've given answers that are so detailed that they tell you what is the feedback that you need to give to your partner if they say anything different. So if this and this and this is different, it's okay. If this is different, then it's bad, and this is the reason. And so even if you don't really understand case interviews yet, you can give high-quality feedback so you can already practice with experienced partners.
Yeah, there's an extensive interviewer guide that is also structured. So even though it's extensive, you can actually use it in real time. Yeah. So let's say, for example, for a brainstorming question, there's, just to give a bit more detail for the listeners. Yeah. For a brainstorming question, for instance, here's our suggested answer. This structure, these ideas. Here's why these ideas are important. Now, here are alternative structures that they could have used that would have been as good as or almost as good as, and we give some guidance there. And then also for the ideas within the structure, and obviously the structures fit the same ideas, otherwise they would be wrong structures. Yeah. For the ideas, these are the critical ones that if they've missed, it's a big deal. Yeah. These are like spike, quality, insightful ideas that the interviewer isn't really expecting, but if you give ideas like that, like those, they're very good. Yeah. And these are not that important, but they're fine. So it's that kind of detail that you want from an answer key, right? And also the drills in our course have that. There's a takeaway section for each drill where we break down what's needed. Now, the other thing that I think is useful for quality practice is meta information about the case or the drill.
What do you mean?
As you said, I don't think I've ever used this term before, but as you said, if you have a simple case, but you don't know it's simple, that's bad. Because you may go in the wrong direction, especially when you're starting out and you can't identify yourself, like what's simple, what's difficult, what's, complex or hard, etc. Also, like, what am I supposed to take 5 minutes to structure? What am I supposed to take 30 seconds to structure? Yeah. For math questions, this is super common. Like, the range is huge, right? And if you don't know that, then how do you know if you did well or not? Yeah. Right? Also, like, one example for estimations. Some estimations, they require a more precise answer because the answer is more findable through assumptions.
Yeah.
While other estimations are like shots in the dark, like estimates the market for VR, headsets in 2050. Like no one's expecting a precise answer for that. It's
Yeah.
like an order of magnitude answer. And if you don't have this meta information about the case or the drill,
Yeah.
it's very hard to know how well you're doing. And if you're close to the bar or not.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing that I think is genius is that curation that you did on the case interview examples article. So if anyone wants to see good examples of case interviews, Julio did a curation of the best YouTube videos.
The 9 best.
The 9 best YouTube videos. And we update that frequently. With like all the videos that you find on YouTube, if you look for case interview examples, he's watched them all and curated the 9 best. But what I think is genius about it is you have meta information. So you have like, is this case realistic? How hard is it?
Yeah.
How good is the performance of the candidate? Would they have passed or not? And then you have other information like, hey, there are these mistakes in the case. Also like comments about the candidate performance, like the candidate's performance was good, but at this point of the case, they didn't do so good. So
Yeah.
and I think that's genius because not only are you watching a quality case, and that's not actual practice, it's just watching, right? Although you could practice with it, but it's an analogy. Not only are you watching a good case, but you also know its shortcomings. What are you supposed to take away from it?
Yeah.
What is not so great about it? And if you want to check that out, you can search on Google for crafting cases, case interview examples. But yeah, that's one example of a meta information.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to find that.
Yeah. I think that to sum everything up from this mistake, the way that candidates can solve this, I think are 3. One of them is going through our free course, Case Interview Fundamentals. When they do that, they'll learn to identify good from bad cases. It becomes pretty clear to them the level of nuance that the questions need to have and the level of difficulty. And they also become sort of intermediate in terms both of doing the case but also giving feedback because they now know what needs to be done and how. And so they kind of jump to the intermediate step. And to get good partners, like you can first solve that catch-22 of your first cases using our casebook. But then for the long term...
And by the way, there's only 2 cases in the casebook.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of time to build content like this.
Yeah. You can get the casebook at craftingcases.com/casebook.
Yeah.
I guess we need to say that.
Yeah.
And for the long term, you need to stick to the good partners. As you do more and more mock interviews with different people, you're going to find 2, 3, 4, 6 candidates who are really good and who have the attention that you need and who are willing to give good feedback and look for good cases, etc. Stick to those people. They're rare, and if you're a good, attentive interviewer as well, they're going to like you as well. So build your own inner circle of sorts.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I want to bring up mistake number 6, which is the last one. And it's not doing solo practice. So this comes back to people who do a lot of mock interviews and think there's only value in working with other candidates. But I completely disagree with that. And for a few reasons. So the first reason is there's lots of friction to work with other people. Unless you're in a university environment where you can find lots of people that are practicing cases at the same time, then the friction is lower, but there's still friction. Like you need to be on the same schedule, right? You need to be in the same place, or at least on Zoom. You can't do it on public transport or, late at night or maybe too early in the morning or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't in a university environment full of candidates preparing at the same time. So one is lots of friction, which means lower frequency of opportunities to practice. So that's one thing. The other thing is it's very time consuming and low in efficiency. So what do I mean by this? In the time consumption thing is to get a case, you need to give a case.
Yeah.
So that usually ends up taking like 1.5 hours realistically to do one case.
Yeah.
And it's low in efficiency because sometimes what you need is a very quant heavy case, for example.
Yeah.
Because you need to work on your case math. But you get a structuring heavy case without a lot of math. So in a sense, you just wasted the whole case, right? Or sometimes what you need is to improve your creativity, and maybe you have a couple brainstorming questions in the case, but in the same amount of time, you could have done 10 drills.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then focus just on the thing that you need the most. So if the thing that you need the most is learning to drive the case and deal with the situation of having another human interviewing you, then it's high efficiency. But that's like 10% of candidates at any point in time, right? 90% of the time, your weakness is another skill, is a specific skill. And then it's low efficiency.
Okay, so what do you mean by solo practice? If you got a beginner, a candidate that's a beginner right in front of you right now asking you, what's solo practice? How does that even work?
Good question. So let's say this beginner is just starting and they're learning estimations.
Yeah.
Which is one of the first things you should learn. One thing is to do an estimation with another person. And you need to do a couple of these to get the dynamic, right? To feel the, as you said, to feel the how it feels to do an interview where you're solving a problem, in this case, an estimation in front of another person.
Yeah.
Once you understand that on a deep level, like on a feeling level, it's more useful to get like 5 prompts, 5 estimation questions, and try to solve them. And the best way to do that is through a step-by-step format that we teach in the free course.
Yeah.
It's a 5-step approach that works for any estimation. It's better to just sit on your own and think through that and solve it on paper, maybe even talk out loud, which is the gold standard. Then just doing more estimations with other people who perhaps don't even know what an estimation is.
Yeah.
Another example, if you're struggling to create your own customized structures for cases, which will happen for everyone, basically.
Yeah.
Again, once you did a few cases and you realized, oh, I don't know how to create customized structures. I'm using rote learning. I've memorized a few frameworks and I'm just using that. I need to learn this. Guess what? You're not going to learn this by working with other candidates. And the reason is you don't know how to do it. And in a real, like even in a mock interview, you don't want to spend 20 minutes building a framework because you're wasting the other person's time, because you're under pressure, like they're looking at you, right?
Yeah.
They're probably not very patient with that. So it's best to practice this on separate. So you get prompts, which are questions, so case questions, and you try to build your own structures. Again, this is going to be 100 times easier if you have the technique, which we teach in the free course, even for creating customized structures, and if you have good quality answer keys that explain, like, not only give you a good answer, but also explain why each piece is where it is and how it could vary.
I think that there's a very concrete example for this that candidates will understand even if they haven't even started. So imagine that, you want to learn estimations, like you said, market sizings. And you want to do, let's say you've figured out that you need to do 5 cases for this. On one hand, you can schedule 5 cases with 5 different mock interview partners who are probably going to be one on each day. So you're going to take 5 days to do that. And they're going to pick the cases. So those cases are most likely going to be, I can predict that for you, repetitive. So that's going to be the market size for bubblegum in the US, for dog food in the US, for cheese in the US.
How many hairdressers and gas stations?
Yeah, and in the end, you're going to feel good because it's going to feel like you can solve all of the cases, but they're just repetitive cases. And those partners are probably also beginners. They're not going to be able to give you good feedback. And you've taken 5 days.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, the gold standard, if you follow everything that we've talked about in this episode, you're going to get your free course, do our estimation module. So you're going to understand exactly what you need to do, what interviewers are testing, why, what are the skills to solve each problem that you might come up with. And you're going to get, 5 case prompts. You're going to get 3 drills in the free course, and you can find prompts elsewhere that might be good quality. Now you can evaluate that from now on.
Yeah.
And then you're going to do them in a 2 to 3 hour sitting. So that is maybe 6 hours of work, which you can cram into one day, and you've solved your estimation market sizing problem a lot better than you would have in the 5 days before.
Yeah, I agree. And there's also an additional factor for solo practice. So I've talked about friction. I've talked about that it's time consuming and that it's low efficiency.
Yeah.
To do only interviews with other people, right? So on parallel, solo practice is low friction. You do it whenever you want. You maybe need internet access, but not even that, right? It's not time consuming. You can do a drill in 5, 10, 20 minutes tops.
Yeah.
And it's high efficiency. You only work on what you need. Now, there's an additional factor, which is you should probably spend most of your time on your weaknesses, especially before your first round ready. Now, between the first round and the final round, there's a good argument to work on your strengths instead. But usually most people will focus on the thing that would get them rejected because it's hard enough to get to the bar, right? So if you don't have everything at the bar yet, you should work on your weaknesses. If everything is above the bar, then you can work on your strengths too. But so let's say you're working on your weaknesses. They're by definition hard for you, right?
Yeah.
Almost by definition. And if they're hard for you, you probably need to internalize some technique. Maybe you need to learn it. Maybe you know it already, but you haven't internalized it yet.
Yeah.
And because of that, you usually need more time to do that thing. So let's say it's creating a custom framework from scratch.
Yeah.
Right? I'm at a level that you can give me any case question right now, and I haven't prepared anything for this, but you can give me any case question right now, and I'll create an excellent custom structure as I speak.
Nice. We should do that in the podcast sometime.
Yeah.
Like a full episode of that.
A full episode with 20 case questions.
Yes.
Maybe we should do that. Okay.
We will.
But and that's fine. So I don't need solo practice for that. Right? I could do solo practice. Let's say I would interview tomorrow at McKinsey. I could do that. I probably would. But I don't need that. Now, if you're not at this level, or if you're not even at the level of I take 2 minutes to create a good custom structure while thinking by myself, which is good enough for an interview, if you're not at this level yet, you should probably work by yourself, because maybe you take 10 minutes to create a structure. And you're not going to do that with another human being in front of you.
And your feedback, if you do, is going to be you're taking too long.
Exactly.
Rather than what you need, which is how good is your structure.
Exactly. So when you work solo, you have more time to work on your thing. So it's kind of like if you're learning to play the guitar, let's say you play the guitar well, but not super well yet. And you're trying to learn a new song, maybe a riff for a song. Like Guns N' Roses, you're learning the sick riffs that they do in Sweet Child O' Mine. And you're learning that because you want to do that well. You're probably going to do that at home.
Yeah, you don't want an audience for that.
Probably watching a video of some guy teaching you how to do this, and you follow the steps, and then you work on your own for a while, and you're not in a hurry. Oh, I'm missing the tempo. Like, you're trying to get your fingers at the right place first. And maybe like, oh, I'm not playing as fast as they are. You're not worrying about that, right? and you don't want an audience, even an audience of 1 or 2. Like, let's say you're hanging out with your friends. Like, no one wants to, like, to have to. You know, when you're with a friend who's playing the guitar and they're trying to learn something new, and then they're like taking 15 minutes to do it, and you're like, oh, just be done with it.
Yeah.
And or like, play that song that I like. You know. So you probably don't want that. And it's the same with cases. Now, you can do solo practice with a friend, but you're not doing a case. You're not doing a mock interview. You're doing the drill together. You can do that. But it's important to take the time to learn the things that you're not very good at.
Yeah.
Because then that's how you get good. And once you get good, you can get fast. And once you're good and fast, then you don't need the solo practice anymore. Then you can test it out on the field with mock interviews. And I think it's important to separate these two phases of learning. Because if you try to put them together, you're not going to get good, and you might be fast, but it's not good, so it doesn't matter. So that's another argument for solo practice.
Solo practice makes me think about what I think is the biggest mistake a candidate can make. It's not in the big 6 that we just mentioned, because this is an ad. We're going to do an ad for our own products, so listen out. It's free.
It's a free product.
It's a free product.
So why are you doing the ad?
Well, later we're going to sell paid courses.
Okay.
But the free course stands on itself. The biggest mistake I think that a candidate can make, a beginner can make, is not spending the next 3 days binge watching our free case interview fundamentals course. Now, let me tell you why.
Okay.
No, we know of all of these mistakes, and we didn't create a random course. We created a course that will solve most of these problems for them.
Right.
Like, once you go through the free course, let me tell you what the free course has first. Then you'll understand how it solves these problems. So basically, we outline the only 6 types of questions that an interviewer is going to ask you in a case interview. Then we give you the step-by-step process to answer those questions and techniques to do each step, so that you'll be able to do that in every case that you get. And then we give you high-quality, in-depth practice with answers where we explain how we would tell something to the interviewer, but also how we thought of that and what you should be learning from that specific case, so that you can do all of the practice on your own.
Right.
So basically, you can do all of it on your own. You'll understand what a good case sounds like. You'll understand what good answers sound like. You'll see what are the skills that are being tested, and you'll understand why. So basically, you'll be able to get good partners because of all of this. You'll be able to give good feedback, interview well, and also do a good performance in your cases. You're going to be able to understand what good cases look like to separate them from the bad ones. You're going to be able to do solo practice so that you're not stuck with mock interviews after mock interviews, which obviously won't help you. And you're going to learn all of that a lot faster than you would in a book that honestly won't even teach you those things.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the biggest mistakes. Like, maybe you don't need to binge watch in the next 3 days. A lot of people should, especially if they're short on time. It's probably one of the best ways to start your preparation. And by the way, guys, we do a lot of, like, we tell a lot to you to go to the free course, but it's because it's very complete. It has all these things going on for it, and it's free. And as Julio said, the reason it's free is because even though it's complete, a lot of people need more help, more practice examples, more advanced techniques in specific weaknesses of them. And that's how we make our money. We sell paid courses for those. But the free course is probably the most helpful to a broader audience, because it teaches all the 6 skills in a very complete manner with practice exercises. And we'll unapologetically send you there because, you know, it's a great resource. And we've worked hard for it, and now we want you to do it because there's no cost involved. Now,
but how do they find it?
Okay, so what's the link again?
craftingcases.com/course.
Okay, and it's probably
simple
on the description below. Yeah.
Yeah, it also is also in the description.
No credit card required. We're not gonna charge you anything for it ever. We can't even charge you because there's no credit card. And yeah, and it's gonna solve all of these beginner mistakes. It's gonna put your preparation in the right mindset. And there's a review that I got. 1 second. There's a review that I got the other day
Bring
Let
it
me
up.
see if I can find it. It's nothing fancy or anything, but I thought it was interesting.
It's cool because someone sent this to us.
Yeah. So let me see if I can find it.
I think it's on our WhatsApp conversation.
Let me see. So yeah, it's by Bjorn. Why don't everyone start this course why don't everyone start with this course when starting their consulting interview journey? It's a question.
Yeah.
We got a review that's a question.
Why don't they start with this course?
I have no idea, Julio. Maybe they're afraid of wasting time. The course is quite long, but you can just do the modules that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say for everyone, it would be valuable to watch the first video of the course, which is right after the welcome video. So it's the first real video. It's called The 6 Building Blocks. It teaches you a new approach to learn case interviews that's skill-based and don't require you to do full cases all the time and helps you only work on your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And then once you see like, oh, I want to improve on this one building block, there's a module for it. So there's another 6 modules, one for each building block. So there's estimations, frameworks, analysis, charts, brainstorming, hypothesis testing, and then you can just focus on that, or you can do the whole course as most people do. So which is the best way. But I guess one reason why they wouldn't do it is it's long, but it's useful. Yeah. Right? And you don't need to do it all. What's another reason people wouldn't do it?
Look,
maybe they've been burned. Maybe they've been burned.
Maybe they've been burned by bad content, and I've seen that a lot. But I think another reason is it's hard. You know, it's got a few 1-hour videos. It's got
you have to do the work.
You have to do the work. Yeah. The practice isn't watch only. Yeah. And you know, if you're not willing to put in all that work, if you're not willing to put in all that mental effort, because it's a lot of mental effort. Like people get tired after they watch the videos. Yeah. Then maybe they want something easier to consume, something that's more consumable rather than actionable. Right. And
maybe a magic pill.
Maybe a magic pill.
A silver bullet.
Maybe a book, like all those other books that you've read and you've memorized stuff and you've put them into tests. Like learning case interviews is hard. It really is hard. It's not simple, it's complex, and it's not easy, it's hard. It takes a lot of work.
But you know something that's interesting? I just searched for our friend Bjorn here, and couple days after giving the review, he joined one of our paid programs. So you absolutely don't need to do that, but it's interesting that we gave a lot of content that's hard. You need to work on it, and he wanted more. Yeah. So it's probably worth it, right?
Yeah. Some people want to put in the work. Yeah. And those people are more likely to get offers because if you're not putting in the work, someone is.
You're competing with those who do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we can wrap up the episode here.
All right. Great. Thank you, Bruno.
All right. See you, Julio.